I never liked dolls, or action figures for that matter, though it was more an abject hatred of dolls than a simple dislike of action figures. I never knew exactly why I hated them so much. Maybe it was the unblinking eyes, or the strange way they always seemed to watch you. I don't really know. What I do know, though, is why I hate them now. I love my wife, and I love my kids. I would do anything for them. They've made me the happiest man I could possibly imagine. Marie, my wife, was a wonderful woman with amazing parents who took a liking to me almost instantly. It was nice being a part of such a large family so unlike mine. She had 2 brothers and a sister, and several aunts and uncles. I wound up spending more time with them than I did my own family. Not that I really wanted to after dealing with my controlling and abusive father for as long as I did. 3 years after we were married, we were blessed with twins. They were both so beautiful. I remember their smiling faces as I held each in my arms that first day. We named them Samantha and Matthew. They were playful scamps, and I spent many a fun day roughhousing with them, playing dolls with Sam or ball with Matt. To me, it was the perfect family life. Wonderful parents, an amazing wife, beautiful children, the American dream. As I said, I love my wife, so I indulged her hobbies even if I didn't care for them myself. She loved to go antiquing, and while I didn't care for delving into musty basements at estate sales or mucking around antique shops, I couldn't deny that she had picked out some winners. That was how we'd gotten our new car. It was a few weeks before Thanksgiving that it all started. Her parents had wanted to see Sam and Matt and spend the day with them. They were 5, and we were more than happy to have a day off. We decided that maybe we'd have a date. We hadn't had one of those in long time. After dropping them off with promises of a huge family Thanksgiving with them soon, my wife and I headed off on our date. I knew the area pretty well, so when we came upon practically stopped traffic, I pulled off on an exit and took the back roads. I'd always loved this way. The houses were old and had the ambiance of an America long past. Traveling along these roads, Marie saw signs for an estate sale. I smiled as soon as I saw the first one. More than happy to indulge her, I followed the signs to a large house. It was probably a 5 or 6 bedroom place, the kind that had the space I wished for as a kid. There were a few other cars there, and the rooms were packed, as though everything from the attic, the basement, and several storage units had been piled in there as well. She went into it with gusto, looking at everything that might even possibly be worth more than the tag on it said. We'd only gotten through the first room when she decided that there was probably nothing there. I had to agree. It seemed like everything in the house was, at worst, about 15 years old, even the paintings. There wasn't much to be made here. So we started picking our way through and back to the entrance. As we passed through, I heard her gasp. Still in its box on a bookcase was the infamous Elf on the Shelf. We both figured that whomever had owned the house before had had kids, so it wasn't much of a surprise. Marie loved it, though. As soon as she could get the box, start reading the blurbs on the back, I was less than thrilled. It was a doll to me, and that made it creepy. From where I stood, I could see its eyes, and I gave an involuntary shiver. Darren, love. I think Matt and Sam would love to do this for Christmas. There it was. She had dropped the kids' names. I forced a smile. I bet they will. What's the tag on it say? It's only $5. I knew from my frequent trips to bookstores that was well below the going price. Honestly, it seemed like a good deal. I could stand to put up with this elf for a few weeks before it got stuffed back into a box to wait out the next Christmas, or the garbage bin. I was hoping the latter. We gave the young man running the sale a $5 bill and headed out. As we drove, she opened the box and began reading the book that came with it. As she read it aloud, she came upon a typo where Santa was misspelled as Satan. We had ourselves a good laugh over it until we realized that every time it should have been Santa, it meant Satan instead. How much do you want to bet this was one of the ones they self-published? I asked her. Seems like it. Everything else seems to be there, though. When we tell the story, we'll just fix it ourselves. No harm done. I gave a shrug and left it at that. I didn't think much of it until after Thanksgiving when we were supposed to begin the tradition. So we set it out on the front step, and I rang the doorbell before jogging around and through the back door, as though I'd been in the kitchen when the bell rang. We all went to the door to find the elf sitting there atop its book. Both Matt and Sam loved it instantly. My wife picked it up and set it atop the dining room table as we all sat down, and she told the story, of course, making the necessary edits. At the end, there was an adoption form for the elf, with the name we wanted to call it, and our family name. She passed the book over to me, and I wrote our family name in, the Hunters, and asked the kids what they wanted to name the elf. A few names passed between them, and they finally decided on the name Broggle. I had to laugh at the cuteness of my kids and their little arguments. I wrote it down for the name of the elf, and my wife placed it on the mantel. Now remember, she reminded them, Christmas magic is very fragile, and if you touch him, you'll break it. We promise we won't touch him. Again, I laughed at the way they chorused it. Alright, kids, time for baths and bed. You wouldn't want the elf to have something bad to say on his first night with the Hunters now, would you? The pair scampered up the stairs, laughing and giggling the entire way, followed by my wife. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. Later that night, when both kids were in bed, we talked more about the elf and deciding who would move it each day. We eventually decided that we would each take 3 night shifts to make sure it was moved. Before we turned in, I moved the elf from the mantel to the kitchen counter, next to the toaster, and went up to join my wife. Things progressed pretty much the same for the next 2 days. We switched out who moved the elf every 3 days, and he always showed up in some rather fun places. The kids came down every morning, looking for where he'd move to next. The cereal cupboard was a fun one. Matt just threw open the door to find the elf sitting there. He gave a start of fright before laughing with the rest of us. The 3rd week was when things got strange. My wife had been online looking for other fun things to do with the elf and brought me a list. There were things like having a marshmallow fight or baking cookies. They all seemed in good fun, especially if the kids got to have fun themselves. So, when I went to the store that afternoon, I made sure to pick up a few extra things. That night, after the kids went to bed, I placed the elf on the mantel and scattered the mini marshmallows I'd purchased all over the floor. The next morning, the marshmallows were gone. The elf was back where it had been, on the bookcase. I wondered if I'd actually done anything the previous night. Before the kids could get up, I had to move the elf somewhere else. When I did, I noticed he had been sitting on a strange card. It was smaller than a business card, but was highly embossed. On it, in elaborate cursive lettering, were the words, "Lying gets you nowhere, in life or death." The darkness of it freaked me out just a little bit, but I put it off. It's probably just some trinket or something that had been left there, and I didn't see it when I put the elf there 2 nights ago. Moving him to the rocking chair, I went back to the kitchen and started making the morning pot of coffee for Marie and I. The familiar squeals of delight echoed in the house a few minutes later, and my wife joined me in the kitchen. She took a coffee mug from the rack and sidled in close. "Did you not put down the marshmallows?" she asked in a whisper. "I was sure I had," I replied in kind. "I guess I just thought I did." "It's okay, love. I'll bake the cookies tonight, and we'll do the marshmallows later." She gave me a kiss before getting the cereal for the kids while I got down the bowls. The day went by as usual, and when I took the kids up for their baths, I knew my wife was in the kitchen hard at work. I ushered them to bed and read them a story before I went back down to help Marie cut the cookies. We talked some more about what we were going to do with the elf, and after an hour or so, she started baking the cookies, assured that the children were asleep. I read one of my books for a short while in the living room before turning in, the smell of freshly baked cookies lingering in the air. Later that night, I awoke with the pangs of natural causes. Groggily, I headed to the bathroom and began to relieve myself. Sitting there, I grew more and more aware of an odd smell. Finishing, I headed around the 2nd floor to try and find what it was. As I looked down the stairs, I saw a haze of smoke and realized that was the smell. I dashed down as the smoke alarm sounded, blaring through the house. The kitchen was full of smoke, so I covered my arm with a sleeve and made my way to the oven and turned it off before opening the window in the back door. Marie arrived on the scene soon after, the kids on her heels, and the alarm off now. As the smoke cleared, I saw the elf on the kitchen counter next to the block of knives. "I guess the elf tried to bake us some cookies tonight. Must be a better elf than a chef," I joked, making light of it all. The kids gave sleepy laughs before heading back upstairs. My wife looked at me in surprise. "I could have sworn I turned it all off." "It's okay. No one got hurt. It's all that matters. And I know that I put the elf on the dining room table." This made me very curious. I dashed over to the elf and picked it up. Sure enough, another card awaited me, this time saying, The blame game is fun until someone gets hurt. "What's that?" she asked. "Another one," I growled. "Another what?" "Another one of these cards." I showed it to her, and I could see fright appear in her eyes. "There are more?" "Just one. It said lying gets you nowhere in life or death." We both looked at the elf, and I swear something changed then. The eyes that had seemed so empty before now looked cold, soulless. I felt myself drawn to it, but I tore my gaze away, placing my hands heavily upon my wife's shoulders, the force managing to break her from a similar trance. "I think we should get rid of it." She nodded fervently before going to grab the book in the box. I looked at the doll over by the knife block and scowled. Creepy little bastard. I picked it up and took it out back to the garbage bin and tossed it in. My wife came shortly after with the box and book and tossed them in after it. Next day was garbage day. It would be gone then. I still felt that primal fear, though, and I know my wife did, too. We didn't know what was going on, but we didn't like it. We slept uneasily that night, both of us waking up at the merest sound. Morning came around, and the kids ran around looking for the elf. They looked sad that they couldn't find it, but I told them not to worry, that the elf had seen that they were excellent children and gone back to the North Pole to tell Santa how good they were. The two giggled at that, obviously proud of their accomplishment. After we'd seen them off to the bus, I made another pot of coffee. We were both in need of it. When the sounds of the garbage truck came through and took our bin, we both loosed a breath we hadn't known we were holding. "Well, that's over now." "I hope so, Darren." It was hard to get to sleep that night, but not nearly as much. When morning came, though, and I reached for my glasses, my hand fell upon something that made my heart sink. Next to my glasses was another card. Hesitantly, I put them on and with quivering hands read the paper in the morning light. "He sees you when you're sleeping." My wife shifted beside me and I barely stifled a yelp. Still she awoke and looked at me. "What's wrong, huh?" Her words were cut off as she saw the card in my fingertips. She gasped at the sight, and I quickly crumpled it up and threw it in the wastebin. "It's nothing. It's probably been there for days. I never noticed it." She didn't even look slightly convinced. "It's gone. We threw it away, and it's at the dump now. It is gone." I was nervous all day. Even the kids noticed it, asking if I was sick. I told them everything was all right, but Ray and I both knew I wasn't. The morning had been a shock to me. When I came home, I made certain that every door was bolted and every window locked. The kids were worried at first, but I managed to allay that by telling them that there was a chill coming, and I didn't want any drafts getting in. I don't think I slept at all that night, or if I did, it was very light. First thing I remember, though, was a piercing shriek from Sam's room. I threw off the covers and ran in. Sitting on the table by her bed was the elf, staring right at her. Taking her up in my arms, I held her close, saying every comforting thing I could think of, trying my damnedest to not let her see it or look at it myself. My wife ran in, and the first thing she saw was the elf. She grabbed it in the car beneath it and took it outside. In the window, I could see the fire pit and the elf in the iron bowl. She was pouring gasoline on it. I saw it go up in a blaze after she struck a match and flicked it in. She looked up at me, and I met her gaze. We were both terrified. The holidays were here, so the kids didn't have to go to school. Even if they did, I don't think I could have made Sam go. I drove them to their grandparents' house before heading for work, telling my mother-in-law about what had happened. She was about to tell me off when she realized how shaken I was. She let it go at that, saying that she would help as best she could. Next day was Christmas Eve, and both my wife and I were off for that day and the next two. That afternoon, as I helped Marie with preparing food for Christmas Eve dinner, I couldn't help but ask, "What did the card say?" "He knows when you're awake." There was silence in the air. It was so thick, it could have been cut with a knife. This time, it's gone. "I know it is," she said with finality. I hugged her tightly, not wanting to say just how much I was doubting that. Next morning, the scream came from Matt's room. He was terrified and curled up in the corner, sobbing his heart out, my wife next to him on her knees, holding him close. "It's in my bed! It's in my bed!" he kept saying. Flinging back the covers, I saw the elf there lying down. I picked it up and found the usual card beneath it. On it was the ominous, "He knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake." I didn't know what to do. Both of my kids were in hysterics. My wife was terrified beyond belief, and I was lost. I didn't know what to do. Took the doll out to the garage, hoping to find some sort of inspiration. Burning it didn't work, throwing it away didn't work. Couldn't get rid of the damned thing. Grabbed the power drill and a box of screws, set it down on a spare place of plywood and began screwing it to the board. Doesn't matter what we do, I said through gritted teeth. If we destroy you, you'll just come back. If we throw you away, you just come back. I'm gonna have to make sure you don't come back. I had plugged it so thoroughly with screws there was no way it would be able to do anything. Satisfied, I tossed it back in the dumpster. Rotten hell, you sick fuck. I didn't care that I was talking to a doll. This thing had been terrorizing my family, and I wasn't gonna stop. This day of Christmas Eve was different. Nobody was happy. Nobody wanted to eat. All anyone wanted to do was distract themselves so completely that the horrors of the past days were over. As the night rolled around, I made the decision to never celebrate Christmas again. Tucking the children into bed, I joined my wife and ours. We waited, reading our books as soft classical music played in the background. After an hour or so, I got up and placed the presents around the tree silently, solemnly. That done, we went back upstairs. Each drank a double dose of NyQuil, and thankfully got some rest. It was midnight when it came. The entire house was hot, so I kicked off my covers and went to check the upstairs thermostat. It was set at 73, but it read over 100. I looked at it in surprise, then I realized that the doors to my kids' rooms were open. Smiling, I figured they were playing a prank and switched it up. Silly kids. I went into Sam's room first, and what I saw made me scream. Hanging from the ceiling fan was my darling Samantha, trussed up in ribbons like a present with a bow on her head. She swung slowly around the room, and I saw the front of her. Words Merry Christmas were carved in her chest. In a panic, I ran to Matt's room and found his form still under the covers. I yanked them back and found my little boy's back filled with knives and his sheet stained red with blood. I was crying now. My kids, my wonderful kids were dead. I was sobbing as I went back to my room. I was expecting the worst now. I flipped on the light and saw my wife still asleep. I ran over to her and shook her, trying to wake her up. Her head rolled off the pillow and thudded against the floor. I ripped the sheets off and carved into her body were the words, "Someone's been naughty." My fists smashed against the wall, leaving a hole. My family, they'd been killed as I slept. The tears ran unabated down my cheeks, but they grew hot. Someone was going to pay for this. I stomped down to the garage, flinging the door wide as I looked around. I went to the garbage bin and peered inside and found nothing. Going back inside, the house seemed even hotter and a bright light shone from the dining room. The sound of mad cackling could be heard as I passed the threshold, and I could see the edge of it. Swirling in the floors of my dining room was a molten pit. Dancing around it were elves, the damned elf on the shelf dolls alive and dancing around this hell pit. I recognized one as the one that we had had. Its smile widened into a toothy grin, and those soulless eyes locked in on me. My heart was pounding in my chest and my brain was screaming at me to run for my life, but I was too far gone. I took the butcher knife from the knife block, stained red with what I could only imagine with my wife's blood, and brandished it at the elves. "You little bastards! You took away everything I loved!" "You agreed to that?" The voice surprised me. My elf was talking to me. "It was all in the contract when you sold your family's souls." "The hell are you talking about?" I screamed. "I didn't sign shit!" My elf held up its adoption form with a spindly arm. In the heat, I saw bits crackling off, and the body of the document changed. "In exchange for a good Christmas, you bet yours and your family's souls that you would follow the rules. You tried to blame us, and make us out to be naughty, which broke the rules, which means we got all of your souls on Christmas." The elves all began to cackle, and the butcher knife slipped from my fingers. "You mean..." "That's right, Darren. You signed away your family's souls. You did it. All you. Then... the typos." "What typos?" the elf asked with a menacing glare. I ran for it. I wasn't about to be caught in this. There had to be a way out. There had to be. I tripped, falling on my face. Past the pain and the tears, I got up and my left leg wouldn't respond. Then I felt myself being dragged backwards. I looked back in fright and saw ribbons wrapped around my leg, and the elves were pulling me back. Scrabbling for a purchase, I began pulling myself past the cupboards before being yanked back as another bunch of ribbons wrapped around my right leg. I kept pulling forward, but for every inch I seemed to gain, it felt like I lost it immediately after. The ribbons snaked up my body, and I felt them slice deep into my bare skin as they pulled me. I cried out in pain, and the cackles only grew wilder. I felt a powerful yank, and I was pulled back several feet. I scratched at the floor, my nails chipping and ripping off as I tried to get away. It was too much, though. The ribbons gave a final yank, and I was pulled into the flaming maw. As the opening grew farther away, I could see the faces of the elves leering over the side, cackling the entire time. When I opened my eyes, I found myself in a room filled with porcelain dolls. Looking around, I saw that they were all either my wife, my daughter, or my son. They were screaming in pain and torture. They were blaming me for the hell they were in, and I was in a far greater hell. For all the pain and torture they went through, I knew deep down that it was me. It was all me. I was the one who had done this to them, and now they were trapped with me. And I had to listen to my family's screams every minute of every hour, surrounded by these cold,